Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the transport ship, watching the massive space station grow larger through the thick glass. Nexus Prime was the biggest structure she had ever seen. The station stretched across space, like a small moon, covered in towers and domes that glowed with soft lights. Ships from every corner of the galaxy moved around it like tiny insects. Elena felt nervous butterflies in her stomach. In her 45 years of life, she had never imagined she would see this place. Humans were not welcome here. They never had been. "Ambassador, we're ready to dock," called Captain Morrison from behind her. The older man looked just as nervous as she felt. "You sure about this?" Elena turned away from the window and smoothed down her dark blue diplomatic uniform. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she carried herself with the confidence that had made her Earth's best negotiator. But inside, her heart was beating fast. "I'm sure," she said, though her voice was quieter than usual. "This is too important to refuse." The invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago, a formal message from the Galactic Confederation's Supreme Council, written in the ancient diplomatic language that only the oldest species still used. It was the first time in human history that one of their people had been asked to speak before the council. The message was short and cold. The human representative will appear before the Supreme Council to discuss their species' role in the coming crisis. Attendance is required. Elena remembered the shock back on Earth when the message arrived. The president had called an emergency meeting. The military leaders had argued for hours about what it meant. Some thought it was a trap. Others believed the aliens finally wanted to make humans full members of the galaxy. Elena knew better. She had studied alien politics for 20 years. This was not about friendship. This was about fear. The transport ship shook slightly as it connected with the docking bay. Elena picked up her small briefcase and walked toward the airlock. Inside the case were files that contained the real truth about humanity, files that the aliens had never seen. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Cool air flowed in, carrying strange smells that reminded Elena of metal and ozone. A tall figure waited for her on the other side. The alien was a Zephyrian, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Its body was made of what looked like living crystal, clear and blue, and it stood almost 8 feet tall. When it moved, small lights flickered inside its crystal form like trapped stars. "Ambassador Vasquez," the Zephyrian said. Its voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with static. "I am Sub-Council Mordek. I will escort you to the council chambers." Elena nodded politely. "Thank you for the welcome." They walked through corridors that were too big for human comfort. The walls were covered in patterns that hurt Elena's eyes when she looked at them directly. Other aliens moved past them, but none paid attention to the human. To them, she was just another primitive species, barely worth notice. As they walked, Mordek spoke without looking at her. "You should understand, human, that this audience is highly unusual. Your species has been part of the Confederation for only 300 years. Most of our members have existed for thousands of years." "I understand," Elena replied. "The Council granted this meeting only because of the current crisis. The Void Swarm approaches from beyond our galaxy. They consume everything in their path. Even we are uncertain about survival." Elena had heard about the Void Swarm. They were creatures from dark space between galaxies, things that ate entire worlds and left nothing behind. The report said they would reach Confederation space in less than 6 months. "What does the Council want from humanity?" Elena asked. Mordek's crystal body flashed with what might have been amusement. "Resources, ships, bodies to throw at the enemy. What else would your species offer?" They reached a massive door that was covered in symbols Elena couldn't read. The door was at least 30 feet tall and made from some kind of black metal that seemed to absorb light. "Beyond this door," Mordek said, "are beings who have ruled the galaxy since before your planet had complex life. Show proper respect, and you may leave with your dignity intact." The door opened slowly, making no sound at all. Elena walked through into the council chambers. The room was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. Around the circular floor, raised, Platforms held the representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species. Each platform was designed for a different type of alien, with different atmospheres and gravity fields. Elena counted 27 platforms, each holding beings that her species had only seen in history books. The Zephyrians sat on platforms of crystal and light. The Kalari were a mass of writhing tentacles connected to a single shared mind. The Vorthan Empire sent their war duke, a creature that looked like an armored bear the size of an elephant. At the highest platform sat Council Prime Zarthek, the oldest Zephyrian alive. His crystal body was so clear it was almost invisible, and when he moved, the lights inside him sparkled like galaxies. Elena walked to the center of the chamber. The floor beneath her feet was made of some material that felt warm and seemed to glow with her steps. All around her, the alien representatives stared down with expressions she couldn't read. The chamber fell silent. Elena could hear her own heartbeat in the stillness. Council Prime Zarthek leaned forward and his voice filled the room without any need for amplification. Human Elena Vasquez of the species Terra, you have been summoned to speak before the Supreme Council of the Galactic Confederation. Elena stood straight and looked up at the towering figure. I am honored by this invitation, Council Prime. A sound like laughter came from several platforms. The Kalari's tentacles writhed in what Elena knew was their expression of amusement. One of the Vorthan representatives made a sound like a growl. Honor, repeated Zarthek, and now Elena could hear the condescension in his voice. Yes, it is indeed an honor for your young species. Tell me, human, what do you know of the threat that approaches our galaxy? I know that the Void Swarm has consumed 17 galaxies over the last 1,000,000 years, Elena said clearly. I know they travel in ships that are larger than most moons. I know they don't communicate, negotiate, or show mercy. They eat everything, living, and then move on. Correct, Zarthek said. Our combined fleets have run extensive calculations. Even fighting together, with every ship and weapon in the Confederation, we estimate only a 23% chance of survival. Murmurs ran around the chamber. Elena noticed that some of the aliens looked frightened. Others looked angry. A few seemed resigned to their fate. Your species, continued Zarthek, controls 47 star systems on the outer rim. Your total population is approximately 8 billion. Your fleet consists of merchant ships and small patrol vessels. By our calculations, you can contribute perhaps 2% to the overall defense effort. More sounds of alien amusement filled the chamber. Elena felt her face flush with anger, but she kept her expression calm. However, Zarthek went on, every resource matters in this crisis. We are prepared to accept your worlds as supply bases. Your people can work in our factories. Your ships can carry supplies to our real warships. In return, we will protect your core worlds from destruction. Elena looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring down at her. These beings had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had technology that seemed like magic. They commanded fleets that could destroy solar systems, and they saw humanity as nothing more than servants. That is very generous, Council Prime, Elena said, her voice steady. Indeed it is, Zarthek replied. Few species so young would be offered such protection. You should be grateful. Elena nodded slowly. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small device. It looked like nothing special, just a simple data pad that any human might carry. Before I respond to your offer, Elena said, I wonder if I might share some information about my species. I believe there are some things the Council may not know about humanity. Zarthek's crystal form flickered with what Elena had learned was irritation. What could your primitive species teach this Council? We have observed your people for 3 centuries. We know your capabilities. Elena smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, she felt completely calm. With respect, Council, Prime, I don't think you do. She activated the datapad, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. The image showed Earth as it appeared from space, a blue and green world that looked peaceful and beautiful. This is how you see my world, Elena said. A young planet with a young species that has just begun to reach for the stars. You see our small fleet and our quiet colonies and you think you understand us. The display changed, showing human settlements scattered across dozens of worlds. They looked normal, even primitive, compared to the great cities of the older species. But, Elena said, and now her voice carried a different tone, what you see is not the whole truth. You see honored council members. There is something you never understood about humanity. She looked up at Zarthek, and her smile became sharp as a blade. You have been watching us for 300 years, but you never asked the right question. You never wondered why a species as young and primitive as humanity survived long enough to reach the stars at all. The chamber had grown very quiet. Elena could feel the attention of every being in the room focused on her. You see, she continued, you all evolved on peaceful worlds. You developed technology gradually over millions of years. You reached for the stars because you were curious, because you wanted to explore and learn. The holographic display changed again, and now it showed scenes that made several of the aliens shift uncomfortably on their platforms. Images of war, of cities burning, of weapons that could crack mountains. Humanity did not reach for the stars. Because we were curious, Elena said, her voice growing stronger. We reached for the stars because we were running out of ways to kill each other on just one planet. The images continued, showing the brutal history that humanity had never shared with the galaxy. Wars that lasted decades, weapons that could sterilize continents, plagues that killed billions, and the survivors who rebuilt from the ashes. Every challenge you face with the Void Swarm, Elena said, looking around the chamber, humanity has faced before. Extinction-level threats? We've survived 12 of them. Enemies that show no mercy? We've fought and defeated them, impossible odds. She paused, and in that silence, every alien in the chamber was staring at the images of humanity's hidden history. Council Prime Zarthek, Elena said, her voice now carrying the authority of someone who spoke for 8 billion survivors. You calculated a 23% chance of survival against the Void Swarm. But you made your calculations based on the assumption that you understand every species in this galaxy. She smiled again, and this time, several aliens actually drew back from her expression. You don't understand humanity at all. Elena's fingers moved across her data pad, and the holographic display in the center of the chamber shifted again. The peaceful images of Earth disappeared, replaced by scenes that made several council members lean back in shock. Let me tell you the real story of humanity, Elena said, her voice cutting through the silence like a sharp knife. The story your spies and observers never saw. The display showed Earth as it really was millions of years ago. Ice covered most of the planet. Massive volcanic eruptions split the ground. Asteroids slammed into the surface with enough force to kill everything for thousands of miles around. While your species evolved on stable worlds with gentle climates, Elena continued, humanity was born in hell. Our planet tried to kill us from the moment we first stood upright. Ice ages that lasted 100,000 years, volcanic winters that blocked out the sun, mass extinctions that wiped out most life on Earth not once, not twice, but dozens of times. Council Prime Zarthek's crystal body flickered with what Elena now recognized as confusion. These are natural disasters. All worlds face such challenges. Elena's smile was cold. Do they? Tell me, Council Prime, how many extinction-level events has your homeworld survived in the last 1,000,000 years? Zarthek was quiet for a moment. The Zephyrian homeworld has remained stable for over 2 million years. Such stability allowed us to develop our advanced crystal technology and— 0, Elena interrupted. The answer is 0. And the Vorthon Empire, Warduke Thekvar, the massive armored alien on one of the higher platforms, growled before answering. The Vorthon worlds are strong and unchanging. We have built our empire on the foundation of— 0, Elena said again. She looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Kalari, ethereals, ascended domains. How many of your worlds have faced total destruction and somehow survived? The silence that followed was answer enough. Humanity, Elena said. And now, the display showed early humans huddled around fires while massive predators stalked them in the darkness. learned to survive when survival should have been impossible. We didn't develop technology because we were curious. We developed it because every day was a fight to stay alive. The images changed, showing the development of human tools. But these weren't the simple stone axes that most species began with. These were weapons designed to kill creatures 10 times larger than a human. Spears that could pierce the hide of giant predators. Traps that could bring down animals the size of buildings. Other species learned to make fire to cook food, Elena said. Humans learned to make fire to drive away the things that wanted to eat us in the night. The Kalari's tentacles writhed in what Elena knew was distress. The collective mind that controlled their entire species spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. This primitive violence is exactly why your species was classified as dangerous when first contact was made. You glorify warfare and... We don't glorify anything, Elena interrupted, and her voice carried an edge that made the massive war duke lean forward with interest. We simply survived what would have killed every other species in this chamber. The display changed again, showing humanity's first wars. But these weren't simple tribal conflicts. These were organized campaigns involving millions of people, weapons that could destroy entire cities, strategies that required thinking decades ahead. The first major human war, Elena said, involved over 50 million combatants. That's more soldiers than the total population of most species when they achieved spaceflight. And that was just the beginning. Images flashed across the hologram showing the progression of human warfare. Medieval battles involving hundreds of thousands of soldiers, industrial wars that consumed entire continents, global conflicts where millions died in single battles. By the time most species develop space travel, Elena continued, they have perhaps experienced a few dozen conflicts in their entire history. Humanity had fought over 14,000 major wars before we ever left our solar system. Warduke Thekvar made a sound that might have been approval. The Vorthan Empire respected strength, and what they were seeing was strength on a scale they had never imagined. But Elena wasn't finished. The display shifted to show human weapons technology, and this time several council members actually stood up from their platforms in alarm. These are nuclear weapons, Elena said calmly, as images of mushroom clouds filled the chamber. Humanity developed them less than a century after achieving powered flight. Most species take thousands of years to develop such destructive capability. We had them before we had computers. Council Prime Zarthek's voice carried a note of horror. Your species created weapons capable of destroying your own planet while still primitive. How did you not extinct yourselves? We almost did, Elena admitted. Several times, but each time we pulled back from the edge. Not because we were wise or peaceful. Because we learned that survival required cooperation as much as competition. The images showed the Cold War, decades where two human nations pointed enough nuclear weapons at each other to end all life on Earth multiple times over. But they also showed the gradual development of diplomacy, of international law, of ways to resolve conflicts without ending civilization. Your species learned cooperation through millions of years of gradual evolution, Elena said. Humanity learned it in 50 years, with extinction as our teacher. The display changed again, showing disasters that had struck Earth. Massive earthquakes that killed hundreds of thousands, volcanic eruptions that changed the climate for years, plague outbreaks that wiped out 1/3 of the human population. The Black Death, Elena said, as images of medieval Europe showed cities full of corpses, killed over 75 million humans in just 5 years. Your entire species, Council Prime Zartek, has a population of 60 million. We lost more people to one disease than your entire civilization has ever produced. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many aliens as she could. But we didn't die out. We didn't give up. We learned from each disaster, adapted, and became stronger. Every crisis that should have ended humanity instead taught us how to survive the next one. The hologram shifted to show more recent human history. World wars involving every nation on the planet. Economic collapses that should have ended civilization. Environmental damage that brought Earth to the edge of becoming uninhabitable. When humanity finally developed space travel, Elena said, it wasn't because we wanted to explore the universe. It was because we had made our own planet too dangerous to live on, and we needed somewhere else to go. Images of the first human colonies appeared, but these weren't the peaceful settlements that other species established. These were military outposts, heavily defended bases designed to survive anything the universe could throw at them. Every human colony, Elena said, was built with the assumption that it would face extinction at least once in its first 100 years. We didn't hope for the best. We planned for the worst. Warduke Thekvar leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows across the chamber floor. You speak of survival and adaptation, but what of conquest? What of the warrior's strength? Elena's smile became sharp. Warduke, your empire has fought 3 major conflicts in the last 1,000 years. Humanity fought 3 major conflicts last week. The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Elena continued before anyone could respond. But we don't fight for glory or territory anymore. We learned something that your empire never has. We learned that the strongest predator isn't the one that kills the most prey. It's the one that survives when everything else dies. The display showed humanity spread across the galaxy, 47 star systems, as Zarthek had said. But now the aliens could see what those systems really contained. Massive industrial complexes that had been disguised as civilian facilities. Asteroid mining operations that were really weapons factories. Research stations that developed technology the rest of the galaxy had never imagined. For 300 years, Elena said, humanity has been the quiet neighbor. We've followed your laws, respected your territories, and kept our true nature hidden. But we've also been preparing. The images showed human ships that looked nothing like the simple transports and patrol vessels the aliens had seen. These were warships designed by a species that had spent its entire existence fighting. Impossible odds. They were ugly, brutal-looking things covered in armor and bristling with weapons. Preparing for what? Asked Sub-Council Mordek, the Zephyrian who had escorted Elena to the chamber. Elena looked up at Council Prime Zarthek, and her expression was completely serious now. For this, she said simply, the Void Swarm isn't humanity's first existential threat. It's not even in our top 10. We've been waiting 300 years for something like this to happen, because we know the universe better than you do. She paused, letting her words sink in. The universe doesn't care about your ancient wisdom or your advanced technology or your peaceful evolution. The universe only cares about one thing: survival. And nobody in this galaxy knows more about survival than humanity. The chamber was completely silent. Elena could see fear in some of the alien faces now. Not fear of the Void Swarm, fear of humanity. So when you sit there and calculate your 23% chance of survival, Elena said, her voice growing stronger, remember that you're calculating based on strategies developed by species that have never faced real extinction. You're using tactics created by minds that have never had to choose between victory and death. She looked around the chamber one more time, meeting the gaze of every council member. Humanity has made that choice before, many times, and we're still on. Here. Helena reached into her briefcase and pulled out a second device. This one was different from her data pad. It looked more complex, with lights that pulsed in patterns the aliens had never seen before. Council members, Elena said, her voice calm, but carrying a new authority. What I've shown you so far is history. Now let me show you the present. She activated the device and suddenly the holographic display changed. Instead of historical images, it now showed real-time data streaming from across human space. Star maps appeared with dozens of systems highlighted in blue. Council Prime Zarthek leaned forward, his crystal body reflecting the light from the display. What are we looking at, Ambassador? You are looking at humanity right now, Elena replied. These signals are coming from our colonies, our space stations, our industrial centers. Everything is happening as we speak. The display zoomed in on a system called New Terra. The aliens could see several planets, asteroid mining operations, and what looked like civilian space stations. Everything appeared normal, peaceful, exactly what they expected from a human colony. Then something changed. Warning. Lights began flashing on the space stations. Massive doors that had been sealed for decades suddenly began opening. The mining operation stopped pulling metals from asteroids and started producing something else entirely. "What is happening?" demanded War Duke Thekvar. "Humanity is waking up," Elena said simply. The peaceful mining platforms were changing before their eyes. Hull plating slid away to reveal weapons batteries. Cargo bays opened to show fighters and bombers that had been hidden inside. What the aliens had thought were simple civilian structures were transforming into military bases. But that was just the beginning. The display shifted to show the planet's surface. Cities that had looked like normal human settlements were also changing. Buildings moved apart to reveal massive launch pads. The ground itself opened up to show underground factories that stretched for miles in every direction. "Impossible," whispered Subcouncil Mordek. "Our surveys showed only civilian populations on these worlds." "Your surveys showed what we wanted you to see," Elena replied. She touched her device and the display zoomed out to show the entire system. Now the aliens could see the truth. New Terra wasn't a peaceful colony. It was a fortress. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid had been turned into part of a massive defensive network. Weapons platforms that had been disguised as communication arrays came online. Shipyards that had been hidden inside hollow asteroids began launching vessels, and the ships that emerged were unlike anything the Confederation had ever seen. They were huge, larger than most alien dreadnoughts, but they moved with a speed that should have been impossible for something their size. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered in armor that looked like it could stop planet-cracking weapons. And the weapons they carried made even War Duke Thekvar's battle fleet look primitive. "Those ships," stammered the Kalari collective mind, "they violate every weapons treaty your species has signed." Elena's smile was cold. "Read the treaties again. Article 15, Section 7. All restrictions are suspended in the event of an extinction-level threat to Confederation space." She touched her device again, and the display expanded to show another human system. The same transformation was happening there. And another system. And another. "How many?" asked Council Prime Zarthek. And for the first time, Elena heard fear in his ancient voice. "All of them," Elena said. "Every human colony, every outpost, every research station. For 300 years, we've been building the largest military force this galaxy has ever seen. We just kept it quiet." The display showed system after system coming online. Industrial complexes that could build warships faster than the Confederation's best yards. Weapons research facilities that had been developing technologies specifically designed to fight creatures like the Void Swarm. Training centers where human soldiers had been preparing for this exact scenario. War Duke Thekvar stood up on his platform, his massive form towering over the chamber. "Your species has deceived the entire Confederation for centuries?" "We've been careful," Elena corrected. "There's a difference." She touched her device once more, and the display showed something that made several council members gasp. It was Luna Station, humanity's oldest space facility. The aliens had seen it many times over the centuries. It orbited Earth's moon and appeared to be nothing more than a research and communications hub. But now massive sections of the station were sliding apart. Hidden bays were opening to reveal weapons that were larger than most alien battleships. Defensive systems that had been disguised as sensor arrays were powering up with energy readings that made the chamber's instruments scream warnings. "Luna Station," Elena said, "has been operational for 312 years. The Confederation's military assessments classify it as a Class C research facility with minimal defensive capabilities." The display zoomed in to show the station's a true structure. It wasn't just a space station. It was a weapons platform the size of a small moon, with enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. "Luna Station," Elena continued, "can produce enough antimatter in 1 week to sterilize every planet in the Zephyrian home system. It has 17 different types of planet-killing weapons, including some that your species haven't even theorized about yet." The chamber erupted in noise as the aliens began talking over each other in their various languages. Elena waited calmly for them to quiet down. "But Luna Station isn't special," she said, when the noise died down. "It's just the oldest. Every major human facility has similar capabilities. We call them peaceful research stations in our diplomatic reports. Internally, we call them fortress worlds." The display changed again, showing the human fleet that was now assembling across their space. Thousands of ships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything in the Confederation Navy. They moved in formations that spoke of decades of planning and training. "This is not possible," said the representative from the ethereal assembly, a being of pure energy that rarely spoke in council sessions. "Our intelligence services monitor all military developments. How could such a force exist without our knowledge?" Elena looked up at the energy being. "Because your intelligence services look for the things they understand. You look for traditional shipyards, conventional weapons, familiar tactics. You never thought to look for a species that approaches warfare completely differently than you. Do." She gestured to the display, which now showed a human shipyard, but it didn't look like the massive space-based construction facilities that other species used. This one was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, completely invisible from the outside. "Human military philosophy is based on one simple principle," Elena said. "Never let your enemy know your true strength until it's too late for them to respond." The shipyard's interior was revealed, showing construction bays that stretched for miles. Hundreds of ships in various stages of completion filled the space. Automated systems worked around the clock, building vessels at a rate that made the Confederation's best facilities look slow. "This single facility," Elena said, "can produce more warships in 1 year than the entire Vorthon Empire has built in the last century." Warduke Thekvar's growl shook the chamber. "Impossible. The Vorthon shipyards are the finest in the galaxy." "For traditional construction methods, yes," Elena agreed. "But humans don't use traditional methods. We use industrial techniques developed during our wars on Earth. Mass production, automated assembly, standardized components. We can build a battleship in the time it takes you to design one." The display showed more hidden facilities. Weapons, labs built inside planets, training centers disguised as agricultural colonies, command bunkers that looked like civilian government buildings but contained military computers more advanced than anything the Confederation used. "Every human colony has been designed with one purpose," Elena continued. "To support the largest military mobilization in galactic history. We've been planning for a threat like the Void Swarm since the day we first learned they existed." Council Prime Zarthek's voice was barely a whisper. "How long have you known about the swarm?" "Longer than you have," Elena said. "Human deep space sensors detected them 2 years ago. We've been tracking their approach and analyzing their tactics. We know how they fight, how they move, what their weaknesses are." She touched her device and the display showed detailed analysis of Void Swarm ships and creatures, technical specifications, battle tactics, weapon effectiveness ratings. It was information that the Confederation's military would have killed to possess. "While your species have been debating and calculating probabilities," Elena said, "humanity has been preparing for war. Real war. The kind of total conflict that determines whether entire civilizations live or die." The display changed one final time, showing the full extent of human military preparation. Fleets that numbered in the tens of thousands. Industrial capacity that could supply armies across multiple star systems. Weapons technology that had been specifically designed to fight extinction-level threats. "This is why we accepted your invitation to this council session," Elena said, looking around the chamber at the shocked alien faces. "Not because we need your protection. Not because we're grateful for your offer of shelter." She paused, and, when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of humanity's hidden strength. "We came here because the Void Swarm is approaching Confederation space, and you're going to need our help to survive." The silence that followed was complete. Every alien in the chamber stared at the display, at the evidence of humanity's true military might. Ships and weapons and industrial capacity on a scale that dwarfed their own forces. Elena looked up at Council Prime Zarthek, You calculated a 23% chance of survival using traditional Confederation military doctrine. But you made those calculations without knowing what humanity could contribute to the fight. She smiled, and this time it wasn't cold or sharp. It was the smile of someone who held all the cards in a game where the stakes were survival itself. Would you like to see the new calculations? Elena stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the shocked silence of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. The holographic display still showed the vast human military machine that had been hidden for 3 centuries. Ships, weapons, and industrial capacity that changed everything about the coming war. Council Prime Zarathek was the first to break the silence. His crystal form had dimmed considerably, and when he spoke, his ancient voice carried a note of something the other. Aliens had never heard from him before. Uncertainty. Ambassador Vasquez, he said slowly. These revelations are unprecedented. If what you show us is accurate, then humanity possesses military capabilities far beyond what we believed possible. It's all accurate, Elena replied. Every ship, every weapon, every facility. Would you like verification from your own intelligence services? She touched her device and suddenly, the chamber's communication systems came alive with incoming signals. Messages from Confederation spy networks across human space, all confirming what Elena had shown them. Their own sources were reporting the same massive mobilization, the same hidden military infrastructure. The Kalari collective mind writhed in distress. Our observers report that human industrial output has increased by 4,000% in the last 72 hours. Military formations are moving toward the galactic rim. These readings cannot be correct. They're correct, Elena said. The question now is what the Confederation intends to do with this information. War Duke Thekvar leaned forward, his massive form casting long shadows. You speak as if you have choices to offer us, human. But you are still only one species among hundreds in the Confederation. Elena's expression didn't change. Are we? Let's look at the numbers. The holographic display shifted to show comparative military statistics. Confederation forces lined up against human capabilities. The results were sobering. The Confederation's combined fleet consists of approximately 47,000 combat vessels, Elena said. Humanity can field 63,000 ships, and our vessels are larger, faster, and more heavily armed than anything you have. She gestured to another set of data. Confederation industrial capacity can produce roughly 200 new ships per month across all member species. Human facilities can produce over 800 ships per month, and we've been stockpiling materials for decades. The numbers continued to appear on the display. Personnel counts, weapons production, resource availability. In every category, humanity either matched or exceeded the combined capabilities of the rest of the galaxy. But the real difference, Elena continued, isn't in our ships or weapons. It's in our experience. New images appeared showing human military training exercises. But these weren't the ceremonial displays that most species called war games. These were massive simulations involving millions of personnel, scenarios that recreated the worst possible combat conditions. Every human officer has trained for extinction-level conflicts, Elena said. Every soldier has prepared for the kind of war where failure means the end of everything. Your militaries train for victory. Ours train for survival. Subcouncil Mordek spoke up, his crystal voice tight with concern. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador? Elena looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every council member. I'm proposing that you face reality. The Void Swarm will be here in 179 days. Your traditional strategies will fail. Your combined forces will be overwhelmed. Your worlds will be consumed. She paused, letting the weight of inevitability settle over the chamber. But there is another option. The display changed to show battle simulations, detailed tactical scenarios that played out the coming conflict using different command structures and strategies. The results were stark and clear. Under Confederation military doctrine, Elena said as the simulations ran, with traditional command structures and conventional tactics, The survival probability remains at 23%. The core worlds fall within 18 months. Total galactic population loss exceeds 90%. The aliens watched in horror as the simulations showed system after system falling to the void swarm. Their proud fleets broken, their ancient civilizations reduced to refugee populations fleeing ahead of an unstoppable enemy. However, Elena said, and the simulations changed. Under human military command using integrated human confederation forces and human strategic doctrine, survival probability increases to 78%. The void swarm is stopped at the galactic rim. Civilian casualties remain below 15%. The new simulations showed a completely different war. Human ships leading combined fleets in coordinated strikes. Confederation forces used as specialized support units under human commanders. The void swarm still advanced, but they faced resistance that adapted and evolved faster than they could overcome. Council Prime Zarthek's voice was barely audible. "You're asking us to place our entire military under human command." "I'm not asking," Elena said. And now her voice carried the authority of someone who spoke for the galaxy's strongest military power. "I'm offering. The choice is yours." The chamber erupted in noise as the alien representatives began arguing among themselves. Elena could hear fragments of conversation in dozens of languages. Some aliens were outraged at the suggestion. Others were calculating the odds. A few seemed resigned to the inevitable. War Duke Thekvar's roar silenced the chamber. "The Vorthan Empire has never bowed to any species. We will not start now." Elena turned to look up at the massive alien. "Then the Vorthan Empire will die. Your choice." "You dare threaten us?" Thekvar's voice shook the chamber walls. "I'm not threatening anyone," Elena replied calmly. "I'm stating facts. The Void Swarm doesn't care about your pride or your traditions. They don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They eat everything in their path and move on." She gestured to the display, which now showed detailed intelligence about Void Swarm tactics. "They've consumed 17 galaxies over the last million years. Every one of those galaxies had species as proud as yours. Species with advanced technology, powerful militaries, ancient civilizations. None of that mattered. The images showed the remains of dead worlds, stripped bare of all organic matter, cities that had once housed billions reduced to empty metal skeletons, entire star systems left as graveyards. The only thing that matters," Elena continued, "is having a military force that can adapt faster than they can. A command structure that can make decisions in hours instead of months. A strategy based on survival instead of glory." She looked directly at War Duke Thekvar. "Your empire's military doctrine is based on honorable combat between warriors. The Void Swarm doesn't fight honorably. They swarm targets with overwhelming numbers, consume everything living, and move on to the next system. Your traditional tactics will get your warriors killed without accomplishing anything." The display showed comparative battle scenarios. Vorthon forces using their traditional formation fighting against simulated Void Swarm attacks. The results were devastating. Even the Empire's finest warriors were overwhelmed by enemies that fought with no regard for honor or individual combat. "But under human command," Elena said as the simulation changed, "Vorthan warriors become the galaxy's most effective close combat specialists. Instead of dying gloriously in hopeless charges, they survive to kill thousands of swarm creatures in coordinated strikes." The new scenario showed Vorthon forces working as part of larger human-led operations, their natural fighting abilities used strategically, supported by human technology and tactics. The results were dramatically different. Thekvar stared at the simulations, his massive form very still. Elena could see him calculating, weighing pride against survival. The ethereal assembly representative spoke, its energy form flickering with distress. "What you're proposing would fundamentally alter the power structure of the galaxy. Humanity would become the dominant species." "Humanity already is the dominant species," Elena replied. "We've just been polite enough not to mention it until now." She touched her device, and the display showed real-time updates from human space. More fleets were assembling, more industrial facilities were coming online, More weapon systems were being activated. While we've been talking, Elena said, humanity has launched another 200 warships. Our industrial output has increased by another 15%. Our forces are already moving toward the projected swarm entry points. She looked around the chamber. We don't need your permission to defend this galaxy. We don't need your resources or your fleets. We could fight this war alone and probably win. The silence that followed was profound. Elena let it stretch for long moments before continuing. But we'd prefer not to. Not because we need your help, but because we'd rather save your civilizations than watch them die. Council Prime Zarthek leaned forward. What would human command mean in practical terms? Complete operational control of all military assets, Elena said without hesitation. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier follows human strategic doctrine. No committee decisions, no votes, no debates. War isn't a democracy. She gestured to the display. Human commanders would be assigned to every major fleet and facility. Your forces would be integrated into our command structure. Your industrial capacity would be redirected to support our military requirements. The aliens exchanged looks of dismay. What Elena was describing was essentially the end of their independence. In return, Elena continued, you get to survive. Your worlds remain inhabited. Your species continue to exist. Your civilizations have a future. Sub-Council Mordek spoke quietly. And after the war? What happens to the galaxy then? Elena smiled, and for the first time in the entire session, it was a genuinely warm expression. After the war, we go back to being the quiet neighbors we've always been. Human ships return to human space. Your governments resume control of your territories. The only difference is that you'll know what we're really capable of. She paused. Of course, there probably won't be any more wars after this one. It's hard to threaten a species that just watched humanity destroy the Void Swarm. The chamber was quiet again. Elena could see the aliens weighing their options. Pride versus survival. Independence versus extinction. I need an answer, Elena said finally. The swarm will be here in 179 days. Every day we wait is a day we can't use to prepare. She looked up at Council Prime Zarthek. Will you follow human command to victory, or maintain your independence as you march to extinction? The silence in the council chamber stretched for what felt like an eternity. Elena stood calmly in the center, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy, all of them grappling with a choice that would reshape everything they had ever known. Council Prime Zarthek was the first to break. His crystal form, which had stood unchanged for over 3,000 years of rule, seemed to dim and crack slightly at the edges. The terms, he said, his ancient voice heavy with the weight of defeat. State them clearly, so there can be no misunderstanding. Elena nodded respectfully. Despite everything, these were still leaders trying to save their people. She could respect that, even as she took their power away. Full operational command of all Confederation military assets, she said. Every ship, every weapon, every military facility. Human commanders will be assigned to all major fleets and installations. All strategic decisions will be made by human leadership. She gestured to her device, and the holographic display showed organizational charts. The galaxy's military structure, completely reorganized under human control. Your industrial capacity will be redirected to support the war effort according to human specifications. Raw materials, manufacturing output, research facilities, all allocated based on our strategic requirements. The display showed production schedules, resource flows, industrial priorities. Everything the galaxy produced would serve humanity's war plan. Military personnel from all species will be integrated into human-led units. Your soldiers will fight, under our command, using our tactics, following our orders without question or delay. Images of mixed-species military units appeared, showing aliens serving under human officers. It was a sight none of them had ever imagined they would see. War Duke Thekvar's voice rumbled through the chamber. And our sovereignty? Our right? To govern our own worlds? Unchanged, Elena replied immediately. Civil government remains under your control. Planetary administration, local laws, cultural practices, all of that stays the same. We're taking command of your military, not your civilization. She looked directly at the massive Vorthon leader. We want to save your people, Warduke, not rule them. The Kalari collective mind writhed with agitation. How long would this arrangement continue? Until the Void Swarm is destroyed, Elena said. Once the threat is eliminated, human forces return to human space. Your military assets are returned to your control. The only permanent change is that everyone will know what humanity is truly capable of. Sub-Council Mordek stepped forward on his crystal platform. And if we refuse? Elena's expression became gentle, but implacable. Then we defend this galaxy without you. Your forces remain under your control, fighting according to your strategies, with your 23% chance of survival. She gestured to the display, which showed 2 different fleet deployments. One showed human forces protecting only human space. The other showed them defending the entire galaxy. We'll establish defensive perimeters around human territory and refugee camps for any civilians who escape the initial swarm advance. We'll do our best to save as many people as possible. But we won't sacrifice human lives to protect governments that chose pride over survival. The message was clear. Humanity would fight this war, with or without them. But without human protection, most of the galaxy's civilizations would die. Council Prime Zarthek looked around the chamber at his fellow leaders. Elena could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. Pride versus extinction. Authority versus survival. I require a moment to consult with my government, Zarthek said finally. Of course, Elena replied. But remember, every hour we delay is an hour the swarm gets closer. The chamber's communication systems came alive as each alien leader contacted their homeworlds. Elena could hear fragments of conversation in dozens of languages, emergency sessions being called, military advisors being consulted, probability calculations being run and rerun. While they talked, Elena activated her own communications device. The display showed her reports from human space, and what the aliens saw there made several of them pause in their conversations. The human mobilization was accelerating. More fleets were being deployed to the galactic rim. Industrial output was increasing every hour. Defensive positions were being established at key strategic points. Admiral Chen reports that the first defensive line is 70% complete, Elena said calmly, knowing the aliens could hear her. Forward reconnaissance units have made contact with swarm advanced scouts. First engagement in approximately 48 hours. The alien conversations became more urgent. Elena had just told them that humanity was already fighting the war while they debated whether to join it. Warduke Thekvar was the first to make his decision. The massive Vorthon leader stood up to his full impressive height and spoke in a voice that carried across the chamber. The Vorthon Empire, he began, then stopped. For a moment, his pride warred with his duty to his people. The Vorthon Empire places its military forces under human command. The words clearly cost him everything. In his culture, military leadership was sacred. To give it to another species was unthinkable. But he had seen the simulations. He knew what would happen if he chose pride over survival. Elena nodded respectfully. Thank you, Warduke. Your warriors will be crucial to our victory. The ethereal assembly was next. Their energy being representative flickered with what Elena had learned was resignation. The assembly concurs. Our vessels and personnel will follow human command. One by one, the other species made their choices. The Kalari collective mind, the ancient Zephyrians, the proud ascended domains, even the smallest member species of the Confederation, each one formally surrendering control of their military to humanity. Finally, only Council Prime Zarthek remained, the oldest being in the chamber, the leader of the galaxy's most advanced civilization, the alien who had ruled longer than human civilization had existed. The Zephyrian Confederation, he said, and his voice carried the weight of millennia, places its military forces under human command. May the universe forgive us for what we have done. Elena felt a moment of genuine sympathy for the ancient being. Council Prime, what you've done is ensure your species survives. History will remember you as the leaders who chose life over pride. She activated her communication device and spoke clearly. Admiral Chen, this is Ambassador Vasquez. Full Confederation military integration is approved. Begin Phase 2 deployment immediately. The response came instantly, broadcast to the entire chamber. Understood, Ambassador. Human fleets are moving to protect all Confederation territories. Integration protocols are active. We're bringing everyone home. The holographic display changed to show the galaxy-wide deployment Elena had just authorized. Human fleets moving to defend every major alien world. Human commanders taking control of Confederation military assets. The largest military operation in galactic history, beginning with brutal efficiency. But there was something else in the display that made the aliens lean forward with surprise. Human ships were moving to protect even the worlds whose governments had been slowest to agree. Refugee camps were being established in human space for civilians from every species. Medical facilities were being prepared to treat alien wounded. You were already protecting us, Sub-Council Mordek said with wonder. Even before we agreed. Elena smiled. We told you. We want to save your civilizations, not rule them. The formal command structure just makes it more efficient. The display showed the defensive preparations in detail. Human engineers working alongside alien technical specialists. Human medical teams training to treat dozens of different physiologies. Human logistics experts coordinating supply lines across hundreds of star systems. Integration is proceeding ahead of schedule, Elena continued. Your people are responding well to human leadership. Better than we expected, actually. Warduke Thekvar's voice carried a note of surprise. Our warriors report that human commanders understand them. They use Vorthon tactical concepts in ways we never considered. Human military doctrine emphasizes using each species' natural strengths, Elena explained. Vorthon warriors excel at close combat, so we put them in situations where that matters. Zephyrian crystal ships have superior sensor systems, so they become our reconnaissance specialists. Everyone contributes what they do best. The display showed mixed species units training together, human officers working with alien troops, not trying to make them fight like humans but helping them be better at fighting like themselves. It's more efficient than pure human units, Elena admitted, and it's definitely more effective than the traditional Confederation approach. Council Prime Zarthek studied the displays with growing amazement. Your species has been planning this level of integration for how long? Since our first contact with the Confederation, Elena replied. We studied every member species, analyzed their capabilities, developed strategies for working with each one. We've been ready for this day for 3 centuries. The implications sank in slowly. Humanity hadn't just been hiding their military strength. They had been preparing to defend the entire galaxy, whether the galaxy wanted their help or not. Why? Asked the Kalari collective mind. Why go to such lengths to protect species that ignored you? Elena was quiet for a moment, considering how to answer. Finally, she looked around the chamber at all the alien faces staring at her. Because that's what humans do. She said simply. We protect the things that matter, and despite all your arrogance and condescension, this galaxy matters to us. You all matter to us. She gestured to the displays showing human forces moving to defend alien worlds. We could have stayed hidden in our own territory and let the swarm consume the rest of you. We would have survived. But survival isn't enough for humanity. We want to build something better than just existence. The chamber fell silent as the aliens processed this. They had spent centuries treating humanity as a minor species, barely worth noticing. And humanity had responded by preparing to die. For them, Elena's communication device chimed with an incoming message. She listened for a moment, then looked up at the council. Admiral Chen reports that first contact with the Void Swarm main force will occur in 36 hours. All human fleets are in position. Confederation forces are fully integrated and responding well to human command. She paused, then smiled with complete confidence. The galaxy is ready for war. Outside the chamber, through the massive windows of Nexus Prime, the aliens could see ships moving through space. Human vessels and alien craft flying in perfect formation, their crews united under human command for the first time in galactic history. Elena looked up at Council Prime Zarthek one last time. Council Prime, you've ruled this galaxy for longer than human civilization has existed. But today the age of ancient powers ends. Today begins the age of humanity. She turned and walked toward the chamber doors, her mission complete. Behind her, the most powerful beings in the galaxy watched as their entire civilization prepared to follow a species they had dismissed as primitive. The call to arms had sounded across the galaxy, and for the first time in millions of years, every species would fight as one, under human command.